Hi folks, HR Funk here with my personally constructed AR. I actually built this a couple of years ago. You may recall seeing the video if you've been a longtime viewer of mine. And when I constructed this rifle, I built it with the Eotech sight because I like Eotech sights. Since that time, there has been some controversy involving Eotechs with regard to the idea that the Zero can shift under temperature extremes. Now, I've got to say, I have never seen that with my Eotech, but it also stays in a relatively temperature-controlled environment during most of its life. So what I'm going to do is start a long-term experiment with the Eotech to see if, when this is exposed to temperature extremes, we see any zero shift. Now, I first zeroed this sight about 2 years ago on a nice sunny 70-degree day, and I've never noticed any difference or any deviation in the zero whatsoever. So today is August 31st of 2017. I have the sight zeroed for 50 yards. I'm going to set up a target. I actually already have it set up. And I'm going to fire about 5 shots at 50 yards to see where the rifle is hitting. Then my plan is to keep this same target for several months into the future. Now here in Ohio, we have 4 actual seasons. And some of those seasons get pretty darn cold. So I'm going to leave the rifle with the Eotech in my Jeep so that it's exposed to whatever the outside temperature is what the temperature is going to be inside my Jeep. I am going to keep the ammunition that I use for these tests in a temperature controlled environment. So I don't want to see any deviation as a result of the ammunition. I only want to evaluate the sight. So as the year gets colder, and this site is exposed to colder and colder temperatures moving into the fall and winter, we'll be able to see if there's any shift in the sights. And then as we get into spring and summer and the temperatures warm back up, again we'll be able to see if there is any shift in the zero of this Eotech sight. I think this is going to be interesting, and so this video is going to be filmed in various installments. And I want to make it one long video from today until the end to see what kind of performance we get from the Eotech sight. Okay folks, I have everything lined up. My target is at 50 yards. I just checked the temperature, and today's temperature is 71 degrees. The rifle has been outside with me all day, so it is acclimated to the ambient temperature. And I'm ready to start shooting. The ammunition that I'm using today is 55 grain. Federal American Eagle, and that's what I plan to use the whole way through this test. So without further ado, let's see where the rifle's hitting today. And there we go, folks. There's our 5 shots for August 31st, 2017. I'll be very interested to see how this test goes in the coming months. All right, not too bad. The shots are pretty much right where I was aiming them. It's pretty much right in line with the zero that I established back when I first set up the rifle about 2 years ago. I'm going to go ahead and mark these shot holes because my plan is to keep this target and that way we'll be able to track all the way through this test exactly where our shots are going to be. Okay folks, we are all set up and ready for the next installment of this video. Today is December the 8th, 2017, and autumn is in full swing here in Ohio. The temperature right now is about 30 degrees, which is not extremely cold for this time of year, but it is 40 degrees cooler than the last time we took video of the test of this site. Now, I'm not expecting a zero shift with just a 40-degree difference in the temperature, but that's the whole point of this experiment, to see if we're going to notice any measurable deviation in our point of impact with this sight. Again, the next installment is going to be later on in the winter when the temperature is even cooler, and we'll check it then. Now, the rifle has been staying in my Jeep for the last couple of nights, and the nighttime temperature has been getting down into the teens. It's actually warmed up a little bit today. In fact, I have a water bottle here that was right beside my rifle inside the Jeep, and it's frozen on the inside, so the temperature is below freezing. It's not frozen solid, by the way, but it does have ice inside of it. So it is cool. It is definitely about 40 degrees cooler than the last time we shot it. I'm going to get ready to go, and I'll do some shooting, and we'll see if we have any measurable difference in our point of impact with this sight. Oh, by the way, the ammunition that I'm going to be shooting was kept warm. It was in a temperature-controlled environment. On the way out here, I kept it warm, and right now I have it in a pocket underneath my field jacket with my body heat keeping it warm. So again, we're just looking at the sight. I don't want to see a difference in our point of impact because the ammunition is colder. So here we go. And here we go, folks. 5 shots at 50 yards. And there's my 5 shots. Let's go see where they hit. Okay, this looks very good. Really what I'm looking at with regard to this sight is an elevation shift. And we're not seeing that at all. We're definitely seeing nothing that's attributable to the sights. Our elevation is basically identical to where it was before. I did have one shot go a little bit high on me here, and this was most certainly me. As I said before, the red dot in the center of my Eotech reticle does completely cover this red aiming spotter, so I have to guesstimate a little bit where I'm shooting in order to hit that, and I guesstimated pretty well today. I got 4 out of the 5 that are on there, and this thing is slightly less than 1 inch in diameter. So again, we're seeing no shift in our point of impact whatsoever, with a 40-degree difference in temperature between the last time and this time. We'll come back out in another month or so when the temperature is even colder, and we'll try it again and see if we see any difference at that point. Folks, at this point, I'm going to have to take a moment to explain a couple of things you're going to see. First off, this was easily the most ambitious video project I have undertaken since I started posting videos to YouTube, both in terms of scope and in terms of the time involved and in terms of the conditions that I was taking video in. That's going to be very apparent in the next segment of video that you're about to see. Basically, what happened was about 2 weeks after I filmed the last segment that you just saw, the temperature here in northern Ohio plummeted, which it has a tendency to do in the wintertime. When that happened, our nighttime temperatures were down below 0, and in the daytime we were warming up into the single digits. On December the 17th, I went out to the range. When I got up that morning, the temperature was below 0. Now my rifle and the Eotech attached to it had been out, still living in my Jeep in all those sub-zero temperatures. So I bundled up, I went out, jumped in my Jeep, quick as I could. I got to the range. I didn't even turn the heater on in the Jeep as I was driving. I was all bundled up so that I wouldn't freeze to death, but there was nothing to warm up the rifle. I did still try to keep the ammunition at a constant temperature. In fact, I had it inside of my parka against my body, trying to use my body heat to keep the ammunition from cooling off and potentially having that affect the point of impact of the bullets. So I got to the range as quickly as I could. I set everything up. By the time I got there and got ready to go, the temperature had warmed up to 1 degree. Now, I don't think the rifle or the sight had warmed up when I pulled it out of the back of my Jeep, but the temperature was up to 1 degree Fahrenheit. And I'll show you that right here. You'll see a screenshot on my phone. I did at least do that, one thing that I did right that day. But I set everything up just like I did in the last video. I explained what I was about to do, dropped down into position, fired out my shots, and when I got done, by the time I got packed up and got back home, of course I didn't realize till I got back home I had a problem. The temperature was just too much for my main camera. It did not record the video of me actually shooting. Now, one fortunate thing that did take place that day is the camera that I had a close-up of the target did work. So you're about to see my 5 shots fired from 50 yards in 1-degree weather back on December the 17th, and you'll see how those shots looked right now. This now brings us up to yesterday. Yesterday was June the 17th, so I had to wait a full 6 months for the temperature to warm up to the point where I could do a high temperature test and contrast that against my low temperature test back in December. So 6 months to the day, I'm back out. Yesterday was the 17th of June, and it was 92 degrees air temperature, but the temperature inside my Jeep was significantly higher. The temperature inside my Jeep with the sun shining on it was 111 degrees. Again, I have a video clip of that right here. And the temperature in my Jeep is 111 degrees, so well over 100 degrees warmer than it was back in December, the last time we tested the Eotech. In fact, it's 110 degrees warmer than it was back then. So as quick as I can, I'm going to pull the rifle out of the back of my Jeep, get it down on the firing line, and we're going to see how the Eotech performs after being in this temperature. So yesterday, as usual, I'm in a little bit of a time crunch. I went straight from work, fast as I could, get out to the range, didn't turn the air conditioner on or anything like that. I did have to go to a different range yesterday than I filmed the other sequences of video on. Those were circumstances beyond my control. I had to use a different range, but I was still shooting from 50 yards. So got there, got the rifle out, quick as I could, set everything up, and fired off my 5 shots at 50 yards yesterday with a rifle in sight that were essentially 111 degrees coming straight out of the Jeep, and firing that out again, trying to keep the ammunition cool so that it was not affecting the results of the test. And here is yesterday's video segment. Okay folks, here we go. Last 5 shots from 50 yards on a 90-degree day with the rifle just coming out of a 111-degree vehicle. Let's see how these shots look. I've got to say, with these light conditions, I can barely see or barely differentiate my orange spotter from the red reticle, so that could have a bearing on the way these shots impact. And there's 5. Let's go see how they look. And here we go, folks. Looks like we got 1, 2, 3, pulled one of them slightly off to the right. One of them's over here for 5. And that is the entire group fired over a span of 10 months. Again, since I left right from work yesterday, I did not have the other camera with me. I only had one, so I was not able to do the picture-in-picture, but I did do the video of me firing and then the close-up of the target. Now, let's take a look at our final target and discuss what the results of this 10 months worth of video and assessment of the Eotech site is showing us under these varying temperatures and the temperature extremes. So here are the final results of our target from all 10 months worth of shooting. We can see with all of that, we have a group size that is probably 2.5 inches. Now, before some of you start to become too critical and tell me about how you can shoot much more accurately at 50 yards than I fired these groups, keep in mind this is 4 different trips to the range. These are 4 different times of me getting in and out of position. This is 4 different sets of barometric pressures and humidities to go along with the temperature. So there are a lot of variables going into this. Also, keep in mind I was not shooting with a magnified optic. I mentioned a couple of times in the videos out on the range that my orange aiming spotter here was very difficult to see because it did not contrast very well with the red reticle, particularly the red dot in the middle of the reticle. And particularly with the segment that I filmed yesterday, this was extremely difficult to see. I kind of had to guess where it was based on the lighting conditions that I had out on the range. So again, if I was shooting this all at one time, I would expect this group to be a little bit smaller. Also, if I was shooting with a magnified optic, I would expect the group to be smaller. I was not. I was firing just with the Eotech. And the ammunition is really nothing all that special. It's just plain old Federal American Eagle 55 grain full metal jacket ammunition. If I was shooting match ammunition or something that I would expect to have a higher degree of accuracy, again, I would expect the group to be a little bit smaller. But even with all of that, I have a group that easily, if we moved it up the target, would be center chest. By the way, the reason that I had the spotter down here was for safety purposes on the original range that I was shooting on. I just wanted to keep my shots a little lower than to have them up middle of the chest or in the head. But if we transferred this up to the head, and I'm going to do something momentarily here to demonstrate this, we would still have all of those shots, all 20 of those shots, easily in the head of the target. And I'll demonstrate that, as I said, right now. Okay, folks, to illustrate the point that I was making before about all these shots staying easily within the head of the target, what I've done is remove the head of my target and cut out the section that's considered the preferred target area. And you can see all of those shots easily, if I'm aiming center of the head, stay within that preferred target area. I want to stress, too, that this is under real-world conditions. I didn't, and there goes my target, it finally died. I did not take the rifle and pack it into an igloo cooler with dry ice. I did not put it in an oven to warm it up. This was all natural temperatures that the rifle and the sight were being exposed to. And if the ammunition had been exposed to those same temperature extremes, I would expect the shot dispersion on this target to be much, much greater than it is now. So any of the thermal drift that is attributable solely to the sight is not really enough for me to be all that concerned about. Again, if I was shooting with a magnifier and the Eotech and I had a group this large, I might be concerned. But here again, these shots fired over 4 different occasions at the range in 4 different sets of environmental conditions, 4 different times with me getting in and out of position. In fact, during the course of making this video, my eyes even got 10 months older. That could have had a bearing on this. So again, any deviation that's attributable solely to the Eotech just doesn't concern me all that much. So that's the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something about the Eotech. Based on these results, I'm not going to be throwing away my Eotech anytime soon and replacing it with anything. I still think it's a good sight. There may be some small degree of thermal shift to the zero of the sight, but again, with all of the other variables involved, I don't think it's enough for me to worry about. If you want to do a test of your own and see how your site does and post a video, by all means do that. I'll be happy to watch it. But otherwise, if you have any questions or concerns or comments about this video, be sure to leave those below. And as always, until next time, good shooting. Bye-bye.